No officer ever anywhere has ever pulled the evidence kit and taken fingerprints. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he thinks this lady is pretty. He's, whatever it is. This week is just strictly story time. I don't have a specific lesson for you in this. You may pick up something or not, but I get requests. People say, just talk about interesting cases you've worked, things you've done. That they would love to hear that, and they like to hear more of that. So, if you're one of those people, you might enjoy this week. I want to talk to you about 3 times the police surprised me. Hi, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. I'm the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. And the examples I'm going to give you are from throughout my career in security and investigations. You know my story. My first job as I came out of the military was as a part-time security guard. I put on that polyester shirt and the cheap tin badge. I went around tugging on doorknobs to make sure they were locked. I went from there to state licensed private investigator, owning and running my own agency for 9 years. That's how you pay the mortgage, the groceries, the cars, the whole 9 yards. I did it, and you can do it too. I want to share with you from throughout that career, including my work in security, loss prevention, private investigations, 3 times that the police have surprised me. The first time I want to share with you about a time the police surprised me, I was working security and I was moving a trespasser, drug addict off of the property, and just diplomacy, verbal commands and things like that. And officer was passing by and saw that something was going on and stopped. Really, first of all, I was that is shocking enough. There's your bonus police surprise. This guy passed by. He wasn't working on the precinct, anything like that. He was en route to someplace else for an administrative task and just saw, no, he thought something's not right here, and he stopped. Mini surprise number one. But as the officer came up and he said to this trespasser, no, you got to leave, pack it up and go. And this trespasser kind of threw down a little bit of trash, a candy bar wrapper or something on the ground as he was packing up. And the officers, no, I will cite you for littering. Pick that up. And that over there too. Made him pick up all this litter around where he was and then send him on his way. What surprised me was littering where I was and a lot of places that I've worked and continue to work. That ain't nothing. That is nothing. You're glad that you don't get poked with a dirty needle. I mean, there is so much stuff going on. The constant crack and everything else. Littering of all things. But here's a time it surprised me. A lot of officers, maybe everyone, have their personal thing. This guy likes to do traffic violations. That guy doesn't like it when license plates are covered with those shields. Officers, that their big thing is they just want to get the dope and the guns. I admire that a lot. Some guys really like to work warrants, find people with outstanding warrants. This cop, littering for some reason was apparently his passion project, his thing, and he would not tolerate it. The fact that this guy was a druggie, he probably had dope on him and a pipe and everything else. No, not a big deal. It was dropping a candy bar wrapper. That's one time the police surprised me. Another time I was surprised by the police, I was a little bit early on in my career as a private investigator, and I was working a surveillance. And every now and then you'll interact with the police while you're on surveillance, one way or another. And I have the Investigator's Ultimate Guide to Surveillance. I talk about these different scenarios, what happens, how to handle them. And on this particular case, a citizen had called and said, hey, there's this guy sitting outside in front of my house. Now, I'm, of course, far enough away from my subject that this doesn't affect my surveillance or anything like that. But an officer is dispatched, a deputy in this case. It was kind of a more rural area. And the deputy comes out and I ID myself. And immediately, of course, it's no problem at all. But the deputy, after he sees that I'm legit, first thing he says is, are you hiring? And I was surprised by that question. Now, as I've interacted with more and more police officers out in the real world and especially around surveillance, either notifying them ahead of time that I'm there or dealing with them when they come up, That is a surprisingly common question that you'll get from police officers when you're doing surveillance. And at the time, I didn't really understand how low paid a lot of police officers are. And I'm not talking your big cities and that where they can make tremendously good money, especially when you consider overtime and other duties that they can do, special duty or that type of thing that different places call it different things. A lot of officers, especially in small towns, rural towns, uh, just not making a lot of money, and they recognize, this is an opportunity, not in any illicit way or not anything like that, but it's intriguing, and they think it's be kind of a cool way to make money. I do have a video out there. You can find it in my blog or floating around. Is private investigator work cool? People perceive that it is, and in a lot of ways it is, of course, but it just surprised me the first time an officer asked me for a job. Finally, one last story about the time that the police surprised me is back when I worked loss prevention, and it was in not a great area, and we had a lot of crime and problems in the parking lot. And along the side of the building, someone's car had gotten broken into or tried to get broken into, and the window had shattered. It did that spider web thing, but it hadn't fallen out yet. And she came in to the store and said, "Hey, is there security?" And blah, blah, blah. Well, we end up calling the cops for her. She wants to file a report. The officer comes out and he sees the damage, and he goes back to the cruiser and he gets the fingerprint kit, the evidence kit. And I'm genuinely surprised. For an automobile break-in or attempted break-in or vandalism or whatever you want to call this or would write it up at, no officer ever anywhere has ever pulled the evidence kit and taken fingerprints. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he thinks this lady is pretty. He's, whatever it is. Comes over, gets out the fingerprint tape, pulls off a big strip and puts it across the window one way and then another strip the other way, making an X with this tape across the window so that when it does eventually break out or fall out, or if she hits a bump driving home, it will mostly stay together and not shatter all over the place. I thought that was a kind, nice gesture, but when he pulled out that evidence kit, it really surprised me. I thought there is no way this guy is fingerprinting, and he didn't, of course. But it was just an interesting time that the police surprised me. I know that these are some more lighthearted examples, and that's why this is story time this week. If you have examples of times the police surprised you, please feel free to share it. We can all kind of learn, and in this case, kind of enjoy the stories from each other. In the meantime, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.